The Deer Society podcast is brought to you by Illusion Hunting Systems, Onyx Hunt, Reveal Cellular Cameras, 10-Point Crossbows, Prime Archery, G5 Broadheads, Osseo Gear, Raw Frozen Scents, and HHA.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in to the Deer Society podcast. I'm Brian Lemke, joined by JJ Ducard and Joe Miles back up in the studio. How you doing, Joe?
Man, doing great. Hope y'all are. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Let's talk about trail camera strategy. So, as we transition out of that first stage of the season, that really early season stage, I would imagine that a lot of, people, I know we do, and I'm sure you do in certain circumstances, but, you're hunting that food to bed pattern, right? So I would imagine a lot of your trail cameras are on those food sources, right? Whether it's a corn or whatever in a state where that's legal, or a soybean field or a cornfield, whatever. How does your trail camera strategy change as we move away from that early season then?
Yep. So immediately once I'm out of that, sometimes I'll already have, like we talked about on the hunt breakdown, in my rut funnels, I'll already have cameras in there. And so I'll just have to go in and turn them on. And sometimes, depending on where it's located in the deer density, I can get them in there in July and turn them on. If they've got good lithium batteries in it, they'll last the season because it's not on a bait pile or a food source that they're going to be hammering all the time, and your batteries are going to die. But so my cameras, as soon as that early season stuff is over, they're going to be in rut funnels and single buck travel corridors like scrapes, like a scrape line that I know where a single buck is. And that's kind of what I'm going to be looking at from then until late season. The rut funnels, when those things start to light up, and then maybe a single buck's corridor where he's got a scrape line for that end of October or middle to end of October. I don't do a whole lot of hunting the first part of October, especially the Midwest. South Carolina, our rut's already going, so it's really rut tactics then. But for the majority of the country, I guess, or for the Midwest anyway, I don't do a whole lot of that October, mid to early October hunting. Although one of the biggest deer I've killed was the 17th of October, and it's because I had transitioned my cameras into a funnel area, and he was coming out of a really thick bedding area, going to some alfalfa that was a mile and a half away, but he was leaving early enough that I got him killed in the afternoon. But it was a complete exception to the rule. That normally doesn't happen.
Yeah, I definitely like the idea of getting those cameras in those rut-type funnels early. I think one of my favorite tactics with cameras is definitely water holes. We've seen it past couple of years of success over the water, and that's that early season, even into through the rut. Those deer just keep coming back for that water. Tying that in with a nice food source or a big scrape next to it where you can get more than one item on camera is definitely a big tactic that we've been using. And water, it just seems like I keep those cameras on water year round, and it shows you what's there. And then you can, and then if you're hunting that rut funnel next to that or close by that, maybe that's, at least the deer that are using those areas too. So I'm a big fan of the water, but you're the rut funnel expert, so you got that situation dialed in now.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I don't know that there's any such thing as an expert, but there's tactics that work for different people. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. Is you've got the mobile guy that is going in, maybe saddle, whatever it may be, and he's reading sign and hunting and breaking down and moving, and that's his strategy throughout the year. And then mine, especially when the rut gets started, is, man, I'm going to lock into the right funnel that's got a whole bunch of long-range travel corridors that I know there's a big deer in that area, and I'm going to rot there. I'm going to stay there. If it's 15 sits in a row, I'm going to stay right there because mathematically, eventually, he's going to come through there. And so that's my rut strategy.
Hear you say it all the time. There's two things that I hear you say consistently, and it's rut funnels and these long-range travel corridors. So for people listening, can you break down like what that combination looks like?
Yeah, so I think the pinch point and funnel gets sometimes misinterpreted, right? That people think, okay, that's where like a field edge meets the hardwoods, and there's a trail that leads through there, and it's kind of like the woods have pinched them down. And technically that is true. But a real funnel and a real long range travel corridor, you call them corridors, and that can be a little bit confusing. You just look at it as a trail, a long range trail. It's some type of either man-made or natural geographic feature that forces deer a certain way. It may be a big bluff like in Kentucky off of a riverbank where you had 4 or 5 trails meandering through this hardwood, but when it got to that bluff, there was a big ditch on one side and a bluff on the other. All 5 of those trails came together right there to form a funnel. And if you walk those trails, those individual trails out from that funnel, you'll start seeing historic buck rubs, rubs that are 5, 6, 7 years old. You'll see fresher buck rubs. You'll see some scrapes. And you follow these trails and they go from big pocket of timber to big pocket of timber. And where all those long range trails that have that buck sign on it, historically, that means bucks have been using it for a long time traveling. Where those things all come together and there's some type of feature. It could be a fence, it could be a highway, it could be a river, a big bend in the river that's forcing them a certain way. And when you find that is obviously where a lot of deer are forced to travel, and that's how I stack the odds in my favor. If that defines long range travel and what a funnel really is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I like that long range corridor, long range trail thing because I can relate that to the way that I scout a lot. And I think a lot of people, whether they're e-scouting or they're out there and they have boots on the ground, I think that it's easy to scout with blinders on, right? Or to look at things on a very micro level and look at a spot and say, okay, well, they might see this pinch there and say, okay, well, it's a good spot because it physically forces deer down. But I like looking at it bigger picture, and that's where the long range stuff comes in. Like when I e-scout or look at something, like I like to zoom way out and understand, okay, these are 2 different big blocks. Like I know deer are going to use both of them at some point, even if they're not doing it daily. But in a rut funnel situation or rut situation, like I like scouting from a big picture, 30,000 foot view like that. And obviously you've had huge success doing that. So I really like that term, long range corridors.
And the point being is this: when those bucks initially start cruising, those long range corridors are generational. They've been using those for years and years, and they feel safe using them. Normally they're in timber or they're in thickets or they're in brush, and it connects those 2 big blocks of woods. Or maybe there's an argument out there that a buck has 2 home ranges and he can go between home ranges, or he's going long ways to find these pockets of does, so he's traveling. And when is he traveling? Is he traveling a lot early season? No, he's locked in on his food source and he's going from A to Z. It's normally really close. When the rut's going on, he's doing whatever it takes to find those does, and he will go a long way to find them. And when you have a spot like that, somewhere along that long range, it's going to force maybe 2 or 3 of those, a geographical feature, and you just amplify your opportunity when you find one that has 3 spots like that all come together. Bobby and I did a course in Tennessee on this exact topic this past spring, and it was amazing. We had some high-level deer hunters that came to this thing, and not the ignorance, but the not really understanding what a long-range corridor was and what a real funnel was. And then we visited like 15 of Bobby's home farm rut funnel stand sites. And after 7 or 8, kind of the light bulb came on. Okay, now I see, you've got a huge draw that's rocky, like a big outcropping. And then you've got a big ditch over here. And so you had this trail that was meandering through here, and you had one that was over here. And if you walk them, they all led down to that one point. and then they split back off and went on their merry way. But because they don't want to walk up and down that giant valley or through that big ditch or through that river, naturally they come to that area naturally. And so that it is a deadly tactic. You've got to have persistence too, is something that he talks about and is very true. You've got to have the mental fortitude to sit there day in and day out with maybe not seeing a whole lot. And that's hard for guys to do, right? 3 days and nothing comes through there, nothing comes through there, nothing comes through there. Then 10 o'clock in the morning, there's a 6.5-year-old 190 that's in between does that comes right through. He has to. He's going to come right through there. So the mental game becomes a big part of it.
Yeah, you do a lot of traveling and hunt a lot of different spots, Joe. Is this something that's more powerful on some properties compared to others? There's a bigger rut funnel. Maybe there's not even a rut funnel on some.
That's a really, really, really good point. Yes. South Carolina is very hard to find a funnel. We're flat, we're cutovers, we're timber. It's very, very hard to find a funnel there. We walked that one farm Bobby and I did early. It was like a 3,500 acre farm, and there was nothing in there. But then that 80 acre farm had the giant bluff and the ditch and the highway, and it was just absolutely perfect. So yeah, I mean, I won't say it's 1 in 100 farms sets up with a good rut funnel, because you can find them, but it's definitely not on every single farm. But then you can create them, like Don does. He creates the funnels. I mean, he uses hinge cutting and even fencing. That he's flat Illinois ground, and he'll put fencing in, or he'll put a bunch of hinge cutting in, because deer are used to trees falling in the woods and having to walk around them. And you can create. Maybe you've got a hardwood ridge, right? It's flat, or it wouldn't be ridge if it was flat, but a hardwood section of land. And you go in there and you're like, there's no funnel in here. I mean, there's a trail here, then 50 yards over here, there's another one, then 75 yards, there's another one over here. Well, if you start hinge cutting or piling up some brush, what you can do is take that one trail, and yeah, they're going to come into it and they go, oh, those trees fell, and they're just going to work around, and then boom, it's on top of one of the other ones. You've just doubled your chances by doing that. And then, yeah, they fork back out and go on about their merry way.
And then timing, because obviously some people have better funnels than others, but timing when bucks are cruising compared to just maybe locked on does or pre-rut, not moving early season quite as much. Are you looking for almost that post-rut?
So really the whole rut, starting about October 25th, if the weather's right, when they do start getting up and moving in daylight, that's when you can start hunting those funnels, and they can be super deadly then. The rut can be a horrible mind game, because again, they may be off with a doe for 4 or 5 days, or in a whole different range, locked down with that doe. But then you'll get him in between does. He'll breed her, leave her, and then it might be 2 or 3 days, or maybe it's within hours that he finds another doe. But if he wants to get from where he's been breeding that doe back over to this block of timber, he's got to come by you. And so between those, and then obviously late rut can be around Thanksgiving, can be magical, because they know it's coming to an end. They know they're not anymore coming in heat, and so they're really going to be traveling looking for those last few.
Are you shooting bucks that you know about in these funnels, or is it mostly like long range, random bucks?
Both.
50-50?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it would be 50-50, but you normally, it depends on what you're after, right? If you know that there's a big deer in the area and you're after that particular buck, it's a 6-year-old 180. I'm just throwing that out there, hypothetical. Eventually, if the funnel is in his home range where he lives, and that home range might be 10 square miles. Every deer's different with their home range. Some of them have really small ones, some of them have big ones. But if you're in his home range and that's where he breeds, eventually he'll come through that funnel. But then you do have the opportunity to get a surprise deer. And you call that blind hunnel funning, because you don't have a clue what's in there, but you know what you're looking for, right? Yeah. Hey, I want a 150 or whatever it may be, and then boom, one comes in there from a long way off that you never knew, never had trail cameras or anything. But yeah, so that is an opportunity to get deer you're not even aware of or in the area.
I like it. Yeah. JJ, as we get into the rut, rut here, what kind of strategies are you using, to capitalize on that time of year?
Well, we hunt the cold fronts heavily, kind of sit back on warmer days and just use intel as much as possible. It makes it a lot more simple now with cell cameras out there. Like I said, those cameras on the water holes and primary scrapes, knowing what's in there and then jumping in during those cold fronts has been dynamite. I know you shot your buck last year on probably the best cold front of the whole season, late October. So you can probably attest to that or tell some stories about how you like that. But yeah, I think cold front is all the chips are in when that cold weather comes in.
Yeah, no doubt.
Knowing that term.
All the chips.
Rhyme a little bit.
I like it.
So we talked there a lot about pre-rut, rut. As we start to transition out of the rut, start getting towards that post-rut, late season, how do your strategies then shift again?
Yeah, I've simplified it, and I've got a ambush tactic, and then I've got a rut funnel tactic. I go right back to early season tactics of where it's going to be consistency on the food source, and then roll in mobile with an ambush setup, hang and hunt type thing, late season, try to connect either from bed, in between bed and food, or right on the X at the food. Both have risk. You can get too close to the bedding and screw it up, especially late season when they've been hunted all year. There's no leaves on the trees. It can be very difficult. The risk you weigh with hunting on the X, where the food is how do you get out of there, right? If he doesn't show, or you've got 30 does that are out there in the bean field or the food plot, what are the chances of you getting picked off? Pretty darn good. What are the chances of one getting downwind of you? Pretty darn good. How do you exit at night if you don't have somebody to come bump for you and he's not made it to the food source yet? So, but again, with that consistent pattern, if you've got an area where, hey, 3 nights in a row with this north wind, he's been there at daylight and I've got a picture of him right there, then, hey man, you got to gamble sometimes and you go all in. In a perfect world, you would know where he's ending up to feed, you would know where he's bedding, and you'd have a spot in between that maybe is a food type funnel. That it's a fence crossing that he has to go through to get to that food, or it's a ditch crossing that he's got to go out to get to that food. You could get on that funnel. I've got air quotes around that. And if he doesn't make it through there, you're able to slip out of there. No one's to the wiser. Everybody, your whole herd's still relaxed. So that's kind of my early and late season tactic. I think you can get away with a lot more early season because they hadn't been hunted. They're in velvet. They're not super switched on. You got a ton of cover, a lot of canopy. Late season, you've really got to be dialed.
Yeah.
Seems like too in the late season when they pile into that food, they stay there longer. Or in the early season, they might come out, eat a little bit, and might fade off a little bit sooner. So you could wait them out and slip out. But yeah, late season, it's like once they're out there, and if you're on the edge of that field, that's tough.
Yeah, for sure.
But
JJ, I know you have had a lot of success during the kind of that post-rut time. Late November, early December, even into late season. What are some ways that you approach that as we shift out of the rut back into those early season type patterns?
Yeah, late season kind of really depends on what that looks like here. I mean, last year we didn't have any snow for months and months. Ended up shooting my buck in mid-December when he was still on the greens, and it was 50 degree, warm. So that's not really a late season hunt for us typically, historically, whereas years prior, even the year before that, we had that rough winter where 2-3 feet of snow, greens are gone. That's not even an option anymore. And it's basically standing grain if you can find some thick cover where they can eat a little bit of browse in there. But really depends what kind of winter we have and how severe it is. And are we going to get new bucks moving in? 2 years ago, we had a ton of new bucks come in, mature bucks. That's one of the best times of the year when all your neighbors' bucks essentially are coming to your property if you have the food. Last year, that didn't happen at all. Just too warm, didn't really get any new bucks. So I think weather up here at least has a huge impact on the strategy. That's my
Weather.
of the late season. But yeah, weather and food,
Yeah.
big thing. The water holes were frozen 2 years ago, whereas last year water holes were wide open. So the whole game was changed based on weather.
Yep.
Joe knows all about the big deep snowfalls down there.
Yeah, South Carolina. God, if this gets into the 20s, we are sold out of toilet paper and milk. So.
It was 45 degrees here. My kids were out back with the sprinkler the other day.
Oh
They're like,
my gosh.
they think it's heat wave and they're at the beach.
That's awesome.
So here's a question for you. So, as we look at the upcoming season, what is one thing that, like, if you could do right now to say, hey, I know this is going to improve my odds of success this season, what would it be?
100% mine would be training with my bow. It's something I can control, and I think guys, including myself, I've been guilty of it in the past, is getting my bow sighted in, kind of shooting it a couple times on the weekend, and not really doing the weapons prep that you should with that piece of equipment, and put yourself in real hunting situations. It's a pain in the butt, but I'm telling you, it will pay off monumentally. Take a lock-on stand or whatever it is you shoot. Take 3 real-life deer targets. Take them out to the woods. Hang a set. Put those targets in different areas. Take a buddy so he can move them around with you and shoot over branches, under branches, get in weird positions, torque your bow. And, man, that goes so far because you work all year to get that one opportunity at that buck, right? And shooting is one thing that you can really get proficient at and you can control. And the technology has come so far that you can take a guy that's never shot a bow, get him dialed in, he goes into the backyard, shoots 8 arrows through the peep sight and the new sights and everything, and he's dialed in, and that bow hangs up, and it's just nothing like actually shooting in the timber. And so that was a long-winded say of a lot of prep with your bow, regardless of if you're an Olympic shooter or just a weekend warrior. That would be my one thing, is to really, really, really focus on getting deadly with your bow.
I like it. JJ?
My mind's in the same lane as Joe. I'm going to expand into just other gear and being comfortable with that too. So you obviously want your bow shooting so well that it feels like you're just riding a bike and it's natural. So when the moment of truth comes, you don't have to focus on it by looking through the peep straight and all kinds of stuff. Should just happen naturally. But outside of that, what are you wearing? Where are your pockets? Where's that rangefinder? Where's that grunt call? Where's your camera arm? Where's the record button on your camera? We have a different element with self-filming. You should almost be able to do all of that with your eyes closed before you hit the tree or the blind or whatever, the field. So it's hard to practice that. Maybe one way is just go out early season and shoot some does. Just get a bunch of does under your belt doing that same process. But knowing where everything is outside of just knowing your bow real well and shooting a lot is key, because I don't know how many times a buck walks in, I can just think of them like skyscraper. I had 5-10 seconds to get the shot off, self-film, push all the buttons, record, get the pin on them, shoot.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have time to think. So you want to be able to do it all without having to think.
Yeah. No, those are both good. Mine, I guess a piece of advice that's a little different, getting away from the gear standpoint, is just mindset and homework. Get your cameras out there, and not for just the time of year that it's upcoming. So don't set your cameras for just September. Think about your strategy. It's a long season. So think about how that strategy can play through the entire season, and then get your mindset wrapped around, like, look, if you can kill a deer opening day and he's ready to be shot, like, absolutely go ahead and do it. But I would say challenge yourself, trust the scouting and the homework that you've already done, and then be prepared to wait until the time's right and then go in, and especially if you're hunting a big or older deer, wait until he is ready. Your intel is telling you that he's ready to go in and be hunted before you go in and hunt. So I guess just mindset, homework, scouting, and then trusting that scouting. So that would be mine. But Anything else you want to dive into on this podcast before we wrap it
I
up?
want Joe to call the shots for the year. What's he going to do? How many bucks are we going to get this year, Joe?
Oh, boy. You know that always and never. I don't know. I'm
What
gonna.
are your goals? What are some goals you have, I guess?
Yeah, I'd obviously like to kill a good buck in South Carolina. That's my home state. I love hunting there, so I'd like to kill one there. I'd like to kill one or two in the Midwest. That's either going to be Kansas, Ohio, or Kentucky. Western Kentucky, I consider that the Midwest. And then like to wrap up down in Texas or Mexico late season. Always a father-son hunt that I really enjoy. I'd like to kill one down there. So that would be a great season and something to strive for. But as y'all very well know, it can go completely awry. So there's so much that the stores have to align. You wrong weather, wrong time, wrong pressure, wrong time. There's so many things that can go wrong. But that would be a great season.
How about you?
Well, I'm keeping it simple for one more year. I was the 3 little kids. We're just going to do the Minnesota-Wisconsin border jump. So if I can fill both those tags on mature bucks, that would be a great season. And then looking into next year, maybe I get out to a couple new states, but keeping it pretty simple. I love my wife, so I got to stay.
Are you saying I don't love mine?
Your kids are older.
Yeah. Mine's a sophomore. He'll be a junior in college. So
Yeah.
crazy.
Time flies.
It does.
And a third.
Man, for me, I hope I draw Kansas tag this year. That would be ideal. And then just Minnesota. Actually, there's a new piece, not a new piece, a piece I've had for a few years that I have never actually hunted on. There's not a lot of trees. It's a lot of grass. But historically have had some of the pictures of our biggest deer there. And I've taken a challenge upon myself to kind of pay some more attention to that property this year. It's super tough to hunt, but I'm spending some time planning. I want to put a water hole in a strategic place and really put some time and effort in there. That excites me this year. So try to kill a buck over there in Minnesota.
Heck yeah.
So
Hoping it's going to be a good year, boys.
it's going to be
I'm ready to get going.
It's going to be an exciting year. It always is. So, guys, good luck out there in the woods. Appreciate you tuning in. Send us photos, videos through Deer Society social media pages. Make sure you download the app. Appreciate you tuning in. Make sure to follow Joe, Osseo Gear, Mission Whitetail. Great stuff coming from him, too. So, appreciate you joining us in the studio, man. Good luck this fall, and we'll definitely be sharing success in the next few months.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
The Deer Society podcast is brought to you by Illusion Hunting Systems, Onyx Hunt, Reveal Cellular Cameras, 10-Point Crossbows, Prime Archery, G5 Broadheads, Osseo Gear, Raw Frozen Scents, and HHA.